A dead chat app is alive. AOL shut down AIM's official servers in 2017 after 20 years of screen names, buddy lists, and chaotic late-night messages. For most companies, that is the end. The servers go dark, the users scatter, and the brand becomes a memory. But AIM had something modern platforms fear, a protocol underneath it. That protocol was called Oscar. It was proprietary, but for years it was studied, documented, and reverse-engineered. Now, a GitHub user named MK6I has built Open Oscar Server, letting people run their own AIM-style network again. The official service died. The conversation did not. That changes everything. Because if a platform can erase your community overnight, then who really owns your community? Discord feels untouchable right now. So did Facebook. So did MySpace. So did AOL. Every dominant platform begins with convenience, then grows into dependence. First, it offers a place to gather. Then it becomes the place. After that, the owners can change the rules whenever they want. They can add biometrics, they can push ads, they can ban users without meaningful explanation. They can squeeze the experience because everyone is already trapped. That is the trap. A centralized platform is a business first and a community second. An open protocol works differently. Email still functions across providers. IRC still survives inside technical communities. AIM should have disappeared, but its protocol kept breathing after the servers were gone. That is not nostalgia. That is a business warning. America Online launched AOL Instant Messenger in 1997. The move was simple but strategically powerful. AIM was not locked only to AOL Internet customers.
It was released as a standalone download, which meant anyone could install it and start chatting.
That choice helped it spread far beyond AOL's own subscriber base. That mattered. AIM did not invent online communication. It packaged it in a way people understood instantly. The buddy list showed who was online and who had disappeared. The bio gave users a tiny public identity. The away message became a primitive status update before social feeds ruled the web. People used those messages to announce plans, express drama, quote Blink-182 lyrics, or signal that they were away from keyboard. It was simple, visible, and strangely addictive. The timing made it powerful. In the late 1990s, the internet was not always on. You signed in, used the connection, and signed off so the phone line could be free again. Presence meant something. Seeing a friend appear online felt like an event, not background noise. Then AIM changed behavior. It made people want to stay connected longer. One-on-one messages became daily routine. Chat rooms let groups gather, plan, argue, flirt, and waste entire evenings together. AIM also offered basic file sharing, and that carried real risk. Before NAT became common in home networks, direct computer-to-computer connections were easier than they should have been. Files moved fast, and viruses often moved with them. The danger was not only technical. Creeps could ruin a screen name. Users sometimes had to abandon accounts just to escape harassment. If that name was tied to an AOL ISP account, even an email address could become collateral damage. AIM was messy, insecure, emotional, and wildly successful. For a generation, it became the backbone of digital social life, and that made AOL look unbeatable. But unbeatable platforms rarely collapse all at once. They usually lose one assumption at a time. AIM depended on a world where desktop messaging was special, dial-up was normal, and phones were not always connected to the internet. That world began to vanish. Broadband weakened the old AOL model. Social networks pulled identity and messaging into larger platforms. SMS made quick communication feel native to the phone. The ground moved first. Then Facebook Messenger, Google Chat, and other services absorbed what remained of the instant messenger crowd. AIM was no longer the center of online social life. It was a reminder of a previous era. In 2017, AOL finally shut off the main AIM servers. Exactly 20 years after launching the client. The official service ended, and the company's control ended with it. That should have been the final chapter. It was not. AIM relied on Oscar, its underlying messaging protocol. Oscar remained proprietary, but years of third-party clients had forced the outside world to understand it. Developers had documented and reverse-engineered enough of it to make revival possible.
During AIM's peak, alternative clients were common.
Third-party servers became the next logical step. The corpse had instructions. Open Oscar Server is one of those projects. GitHub user MK6I built it to restore AIM-style functionality without AOL's original servers. The project appeared in vintage computing circles, including Vintage Computer Festival SoCal. It can run on a Debian Trixie virtual machine, but it is not locked there. Binaries exist for Linux, Mac, and Windows, which makes the resurrection surprisingly portable. This is where the business lesson gets sharper. AOL owned the platform experience, but it did not fully erase the protocol knowledge. Once a protocol is understood widely enough, control becomes harder to reclaim. A shutdown can kill the official service. It cannot always kill the behavior it created. That is why protocols are dangerous to companies built on lock-in. The revival is not theoretical. The setup is practical enough for hobbyists to run. First, the server package is downloaded and extracted. Then, the server address is configured so clients know where to connect. That address can be an IP address or a domain name. For a private home network, the configuration can stay on the LAN. For friends connecting across the internet, WAN settings are needed. Names matter here. Open Oscar Server uses configuration fields such as Oscar Listeners and Oscar Advertised Listeners Plain. Those values tell the server where to listen and what address to advertise to clients. Once that is set, the server can be launched and an AIM client can point to it. The project recommends AIM 5.1. That client runs under Wine on Linux and also works on old Windows 98 machines. Then comes the strangest part. The login process feels almost absurd. The old Get a Screen Name window can be closed. Inside setup, the connection host is changed to match the configured server address. Then, the user picks a screen name and password and signs in. Another person does the same from another machine. Suddenly, two users are messaging through an AIM-like network with no AOL server involved. The brand lost control. Chat rooms work too, which means small groups can rebuild the old social rhythm. Modern clients such as Pigeon can also connect, including on current Linux systems. People have tested setups across modern laptops, Asahi-based machines, ancient Windows computers, and even platforms with AIM clients like the Amiga. The result is strange, fragile, and revealing. Running it privately is easy. Running it publicly requires discipline. By default, if authentication is not enforced, users can choose arbitrary names and passwords.
That creates obvious abuse risk. Open Oscar Server addresses this with a disable auth setting.
When that variable is set to false, users must be created through the console or via the API. That turns a toy into something closer to a controlled service. For reliability, the server can run as a systemd service, so it stays online after the administrator logs out. Backups are also manageable because the project is lightweight. The important pieces are configuration files and a SQLite database. A simple process can stop the server, copy the files with rsync, and run on a cron schedule.
That is not enterprise infrastructure.
But it is enough to keep a small community alive. And that is the part every modern platform should make people think about. Not because everyone should abandon Discord tomorrow. Not because old software is automatically better. Not because nostalgia is a strategy. But because communities keep making the same bargain. They trade ownership for convenience. They trade control for growth. They trade resilience for a cleaner interface, a bigger network, and a company promising that the servers will always be there. They never are. AOL had the brand. AOL had the users. AOL had the official servers. But Oscar carried the shape of the behavior underneath. Once that shape escaped into documentation, third-party clients, and developer memory, AIM became harder to kill than AOL expected. The company could shut down its service. It could not erase the pattern. That is the difference between a platform and a protocol. A platform wants you inside its walls. A protocol gives other people a way to build doors. Platforms can be faster, prettier, safer, and easier to monetize. That is why they win in the beginning. But the same control that makes them efficient also makes them dangerous when the incentives change. When a platform turns hostile, the users do not negotiate from strength. They are inside someone else's building. The rules can change, the pricing can change, the moderation can change, the identity system can change, the data access can change. And if the company decides the community is no longer worth serving, the lights go out. That is not a bug. That is the business model. AIM's ghost matters because it shows another possibility. Not perfect freedom, not perfect safety, not some fantasy where abuse disappears and every server owner behaves well. Protocols still need rules. Servers still need administrators. Communities still need moderation, trust, backups, and discipline. But protocols create options. If one server disappears, another can exist. If one administrator leaves, someone else can rebuild. If one company loses interest, the pattern can survive. That resilience is not glamorous. It is leverage. It is easy to dismiss this as nostalgia. Old sounds, old windows, old screen names. But the real story is not that people miss AIM. The real story is that a dead company cannot fully bury an open communication pattern once enough people understand how it works. That is the warning. AOL once looked permanent and it stopped. MySpace looked culturally unstoppable and it faded. Facebook changed the internet, and many communities have already moved away. One day, Discord may become hostile, abandoned, overpriced, or irrelevant. If your entire community lives inside one company's walls, that company controls your future. Protocols do not guarantee freedom. They do not guarantee safety. But they give people a fighting chance to rebuild without asking permission. Email survived. IRC survived. AIM's official servers died in 2017, yet Oscar brought the ghost back. Platforms expire when the business model turns. Protocols survive when people refuse to let the conversation die. The most dangerous thing a platform can lose is not its users. It is control of the way those users connect.